Hi, and welcome to the Living in Harmony Family Ministry Podcast, where parents are at the forefront of raising their kids. We exist to help families create a biblical culture in the home while navigating the culture in the world. That being said, welcome to the show. Well, welcome to Living in Harmony. My name is Delmar.
I am Robert.
And I'm April.
And it is good to be into another year, 2023, in the year of our Lord. And we are back, Family Podcast. How was everything? How was Christmas? How was New Year? How was this week? It's been a roller coaster, I hear.
Yeah. So Christmas and New Year's was great.
That's all you're gonna say. Christmas and New Year's was great.
No, we did a lot of cool, fun things. We did a lot of family things. We had game nights, we had dinners, we had friends over for various different things. We did a lot of really cool
fondue.
Things. Fondue, yeah.
Tradition.
We even had some gluten-free foods.
Yeah.
We had some not gluten-free foods.
I won't judge you.
So there's that.
And then yesterday happened.
Well, this weekend, yes. So this weekend, let's see, our daughter moved. We moved her 2 hours away. She is starting chiropractor school. So,
which is really cool. We're very proud of her.
And we're excited.
She's going to be great
excited.
at it.
And, but it was just one of those things, where, and it was kind of on my mind that when we dropped her off for college, when she was, 4.5 years ago, and you kind of knew you were dropping her off, but she'd be back for weekends and summers and things like that. And so this was a little more like it's a year-round thing, it's 3.5 years of 3.5 years of school. And so it was a little different. We hugged her goodbye, and everybody was, she's excited. We're excited for her. And then I just couldn't let go. I was hugging her in the driveway. I was like, I don't want to let go. And she was crying. She's like, I wasn't supposed to cry.
Isn't that how it always goes? But from a more outside in, but a little bit inside perspective, I even sent her a text because for anyone listening, she was a student of mine a long time ago. And then she went off to college. And then we all found ourselves in a new church. And then for the last semester, she's been a key leader in the ministry, one of the ministries I'm over. And wow, it's this full circle thing. I've got to see her grow up and go away, grew in her faith when she went away, came back, flourished, and now she's gone. And it's weird because a lot of times when students go off to college, it's like, they're coming back probably, but this time it just felt, it's real. It's like she's leaving, So I get it. And I think we were all texting, but it's sad. But at the same time, it's like, how awesome is it to know that you've sent out a missionary?
Yeah.
And so well done on that front. And I love that, especially in some students, she's a good example, but in a lot of younger people, you get to see the fullness of what does it mean when a family takes point in raising their kid, but they also bring a church in with it and are engaged with the church, not just babysit my kid. That's awesome. So, well, I'm glad y'all had a good, everything, and this too shall pass. So for us, it was kind of a low key Christmas and New Year. My grandmother passed, so that made things a little different in the new, and when we usually go over to her house, it's grandpa there, she's not there. And then, but we're moving through that. And then today is our, me and Hannah's 10-year anniversary since we decided we were going to date. So, and let me just say, I'm pretty competitive, but she won this year so hard. She texted me a picture. I'm like, what is this? And she literally is commissioning and having a full pub bar made to put in this studio we're recording right now to recreate our favorite TV show, Cheers, upstairs. We are going to have a venue to record all of our podcasts in, and it's going to, oh man. So I'm excited and humbled and overwhelmed.
I'm excited.
I know, right?
Super cool.
So we are going to be able to have some guests in on the show and have a really, really cool environment. It's really good to see how this podcast is moving forward and creating opportunities and spaces. And it's even energizing even my wife to get engaged in that way. She's a very behind the scene girl, but Holy cow, blowing it out of the water behind the scenes. Thank you, Hannah.
And can I just say for a minute how much I appreciate the foresight that you and Hannah had to start dating on our youngest son's birthday, because that is just the coolest thing ever.
I thought about it. I said, I want it to be easy for everyone to remember.
That's right.
But yes,
because our youngest is turning. Our youngest is today. Has turned 20. So.
Well, hey, it is good. So as we're talking about what our family's been doing, we're going to move into this new segment that we've been talking about, and I'm actually really excited about this segment. I think our listeners are going to really benefit from it. Some of this stuff that we're getting is actually now coming from our listeners, and from other areas. So like this is really neat. So we're going to be talking about what is it in the fam, and the conversation for in the fam this week is one thing that we've talked around a lot, and today we're just going to jump in the deep end with it, because I think this is going to open us up in the future for where we continue going. And it's this whole concept that having a good family, having an honoring family, a holy family, oftentimes comes with creating a strong family bond. Mm-hmm. And as I thought through this, I realized that there's different types of families when it comes to like a bond, a closeness. There are some that don't try and it doesn't happen, right? I'm working, earning money for this family, whatever. And they don't try and the bond never happens. Then they move away and congratulations, you had a place to live growing up. Then you have the families who they don't try, but it does happen. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't necessarily try to make that bond. They're not like, we're going to be bond makers and here's our 5-point strategy, but they're so close. And some of that has to do with family dynamic, what they grew up in, the value systems they had. It's just organic and natural. And then you have some families that have a bond and it's intentional. And the intentionality and non-intentionality probably interchange a little bit back and forth. Because not every minute you're like, this is going to be a bonding moment. But like you see the families who are like, no, this is very intentional. Like I see some families, they have game nights, right? And game nights, that is an intentional or, push to get out there. So creating a family bond. And first of all, before we even get into any examples of how to do this practically, because one of the things we want to be able to do on this podcast is to give it practically, is to talk about why the need for it even to begin with. So that would be the first thing I would just lob at y'all. Like we kind of know in our gut, yeah, your family should be close. We're going to get into like a little bit of how that happens. But why is that even necessary in the family?
Well, I think one of the things, we've sort of touched on this a little bit, and it's really been, it's something that God's been working on me a lot in the last couple of years, is this the idea of community, that the idea that He doesn't put us out here to be, just in relationship to Him. He does want us to be in relationship to Him, but not just in relationship with Him. He puts us in groups of people in order to grow with each other and to learn from each other. And one of the primary ways that He does that is in the family. There are so many things I didn't understand about the nature of God and His His love and His ability and willingness to do things for us until I had kids and I'm doing things for them, and experiencing that. And so I think he gives us those opportunities or those opportunities to grow, to be more like Him. But in doing that, we have to be in those communities and having those family bonds, being in those places. And I think we'll probably talk about some more specific examples, but being in those places with those people that He puts you with over a long period of time is a fantastic way for us to grow to be more like God.
I also think that another benefit of closeness with your family is that people want to be close. They want to be close. They want to have friendships. They want to have those deeper, more intimate friendships and things with people. And so, our kids have some really close friendships with, some of their friends, but you also want that to be within your family as well. And if you don't have a close family, they're going to be looking, even at a younger and younger age, they're going to be looking elsewhere for that closeness. And sometimes that might end up with that they're finding close friendships with in a way that's positive, but it also could end up in a way that's maybe not so positive. And so there's an intentionality too of, you want to have a close family so they can feel comfortable talking about things with you. You want them to feel comfortable asking things. And if you don't have a close friendship or a close family relationship, kids are not always going to feel like they can come to you and ask questions. They might be concerned that, that it's not a safe place for them to ask questions or to, to get help navigating through life. So there's a trust that comes with that closeness too.
Yeah. And in the vein of that trust, it's like, this is not the place where you just move out, right? One of the things I love about working for a family bond is you learn how to work through the stuff, problems, conflicts, everything that a lot of times failed marriages are a result of people not learning how to work through stuff. Yeah. So the family is like, no, this is a place of trust. You can't just pack up and move out. So when we're teaching our kids and when our kids are watching us fight to be in this, it's passing on stuff that's going to transcend just our time together. And I heard somebody say the other day, and I never thought about this, but it's very true, especially if you have multiple kids. When a lot of times your kids, their siblings, that is the longest friend they will ever have.
Yes.
Because they know them since they were born, and many times until they die. Your siblings, that's the longest friends. There will be other powerful friends, but that's the longest running one. And I just think there's a lot of power and value in that. I know that even I've gone through stuff, and sometimes things gotten really bad. And my brother, he's been the first one that I've called sometimes. So there's a lot to be said about this family bond.
You said something in there, kind of in passing, that I think is important to pay attention to. That God doesn't. We're not just in life to be in life, but and not just in families to be in relationship with each other per se. But you talked about the idea that you learn things in dealing with your family and dealing with your siblings that then help you in your own marriage. You learn things in dealing with your siblings that help you to get along with people at work, to help you to be a better person and a better coworker and help you in so many different ways. Those conflict resolution skills and negotiating and having to to share and even just those very basic things that kids with siblings learn very, very early or have to deal with very early. Those are very valuable in other contexts.
Yeah. And as we talk about the value of these things and how we acquire them, I want us to go ahead and move into some of the things that we had discussed a little earlier and bring them to light. These are just some practical things we can do to help us, if you will, learn how to be together, learn how to be in community. Sometimes might even help you fight a little bit, which isn't bad. And consequently, as I was looking through these are great ways to build your family bond. But these are even great if you don't have kids. Like if you do have kids, and you're like, hey, listen, me and my wife, we got to work on us for a minute. These things work for that too, yes. Because relationships are relationships. And when we can incorporate our whole family into them, it just enhances everything. So do any of y'all want to take a stab at the first one?
Sure, I will. So spending time together, super important. One of the things that for us, we've really enjoyed using along the years, family game night. We like playing games, but just knowing that our kids, being able to work together as a team, sometimes it's competitive games. Sometimes it's been cooperative games where you all either win together or lose together. Sometimes it's, not where there's more often than not, it's not cooperative games. It's, a clear winner, but just spending that time together, you get to practice so many things. I mean, you get to practice the excitement of, just the excitement of winning and strategizing and talking to each other. And you could actually even learn to lose well, win graciously. It gives you opportunities to, if you have a kid that tends to, trash talk or gloat a whole lot, it gives you an opportunity to teach them to be, you know, a better person,
Yeah.
a better person with how they deal with successes or failures, but it's just fun, you know, and food is involved and, or like a movie night or, you know, things like that. Those are great ways to be able to just look forward to games. And you can, you know, different people can pick a game different weeks. And I mean, we've done that where people have had to learn, you know, this isn't maybe the game you wanted to play, but it wasn't your turn to pick, and you're still going to play and enjoy it and not be a pill. So there's a lot you can learn through that.
There have been times, it's funny you say that, because there have been times when it's been like, oh, we're gonna play games tonight, and one or more of the kids is like, I don't wanna. And then, you know, most of the time, by the time you get into it, you know, everybody's like having a good time, and at the end of it, you know, we'll look over at the one who was being grumpy. It's like, you had a good time, didn't you? It's like, well, maybe. Fine.
And, you know, it's not even just within the family, because some of our closest friendships that we've had along the years happened because we had a mutual love of a particular game that we would get together and play. And we would have, our families would get together and have game nights or, you know, different things like that. And it's funny that some of the families we've done that with, even though at times different ones of us have moved away and come and gone, we're still in contact today and, you know, make a point to keep the friendship going.
Yeah. So on that note, because there's so much wealth in here, it's easy just to pass over. Oh yeah, of course you need to spend time together. But like that's one of the easiest ones to let ride up on us because we know it's there. We know it's important. We're like, oh, well, we spent time together. No, we ate in the same room. There's a difference between doing that and genuinely being together. And one of the things that I will just confess is like sometimes if you're not really good at the family time thing yet, or if you got young kids like me, I'm still learning how to develop that. I cannot wait until my children are old enough we can start doing movies together, which Mario's coming out. So we're going to take a stab at it, right? But like we're not there yet. So what I love is like a while back, our family went over to even your house and we played, if you want to call it, like Quiplash, and we had fun with y'all. And what happens is like you're transmitting how to do it. So if you're here today and you're like, man, hanging out with our family is awkward because we've never done that before. And if we just was to turn that key, it'd be so awkward, we wouldn't have fun. Okay, cool. Find a family you like,
right.
Invite them over, and y'all play a game together. And eventually you just do it without the other family there. Mm-hmm. It's a really healthy way to ease into that if you're not used to this. But like the quality time, it almost needs to, in that moment, feel like this is what we're doing. You know, right. we are, it's intentional.
Yeah. You want to say, oh, we'll just like, you know, it's like with a lot of things in marriage. It's like, oh, it doesn't count if it's scheduled, if it's on purpose. It's got to be spontaneous. But at the same time, you know, it's got to be from the heart. But
I'm laughing because, you know, I love schedules. And
yes.
So that would never occur to me to not like it because it was scheduled.
But that's kind of the point, is sometimes you have to schedule these things, maybe not to schedule every second of the activity, but to get other things out of the way and say, no, we're not going to do this other thing because we've got, you know, or we're going to do that later because we're going to do this now. We're going to block off this amount of time. And, you know, as your kids get older, for sure, that gets to be a bigger deal. You know, once they start to get where they have their own ability to get out and go someplace, whether that's to the friend's house down the street or get in the car and go someplace, you really have to nail that down. It's very, very easy for them to say, oh yeah, I've got this other thing I was going to do, if you don't communicate that.
So create the habit early, so that way the time together feels, the value's felt. And it's already seen. You
know, something else I might mention, just because of where we are now at the stage of life we're at, which is that, you know, our like I said, our youngest turned 20 today. And so, you know, we've got a married son. We've got a daughter who's now 2 hours away. We've got our youngest son who's 20, and everybody has other things that they're involved in. And so if we didn't have already that years upon years upon years of practice of we like spending time together and we like to do certain things together, I think it would be hard now to be trying to say, hey, let's try to get together. But, you know, I think it's a little bit easier to still find, and sometimes it can be hard to find a time when everybody's schedules work. But
it's a habit like any other habit. The more you do it, the easier it gets. But just like any other habit, you can start, you know, you can learn a skill later in life, and you can do it. So just because you didn't do it when your kids were 7 and now they're, in middle school, that doesn't mean you can't. It just means it looks a little different. It may be a little more difficult to get things going.
So what I think I'm hearing is we definitely need to have a how to be an empty nester family episode coming up here soon. I think we know a few people who could probably contribute to that. A couple of them listen. Robert, you want to take our second one?
Yeah, I think one thing, to think about when you're doing, and it kind of comes out in doing things together. I think it was our pre-marriage counseling when April and I got married way back in the day. There was a guy who was talking about, good, strong families, go camping. He's like, is it camping? And he said, we've been camping for a lot of years. I can tell you it's not camping. But what it is happens at camping a lot. And he told this story about being in the rain and the tent falling down and things like that. And the point is that they set aside an activity where they went out and they did something, they did something, and it was kind of like spending time together, but it was spending time together in an event where I guess where you're likely to face a challenge, where you have to kind of come together and look at how to solve a problem. In
it
his
might
case,
start raining in the middle
Yes.
of your campsite.
Yeah, it might start raining, and then your tent falls over, and then you've got this great story to tell. And some of those, an escape room is kind of a miniature thing like that's very controlled. But a lot of those things happen. So when you're thinking about, building these bonds, there's nothing quite like the bond that you build with somebody by, getting through something challenging, solving a problem with someone together, or facing some piece of adversity. And so looking at some of those activities, what can we do? Well, sometimes it's a cross-country car trip, and, you look back and it's like, oh my gosh, that was so miserable, but you're telling stories about it 10 years later.
But so I love that. So do something challenging with your family. That's fantastic. So lately that's been having sleepovers in the man cave with the boys. That's been challenging. But yeah, like where you doing a thing together requires you to communicate, requires you to get out of your shell, talk about something you wouldn't normally talk about.
And those things can be work too. I can remember times when I was growing up that we would go out and chop wood with my dad for the fireplace, and that was a thing, and it was difficult, but those are memories that you look back on, and it's like, okay, that was a thing that we kind of did together.
And something tells me, I'm not there yet. I still got a few years, but something tells me those moments when you look back where you really worked with your children are some of your best moments. Mm-hmm. My dad, he's self-employed, and he quit his job when I was like 14, and he went full-time doing yard maintenance. It was the best decision he ever made in his career. But he told me a couple of years ago, he goes, the absolute best thing, the best part about being a self-employed was my 2 boys worked with me for 10 years straight. He's like, I sat in the car with you and taught you how to weed eat and edge and interact with, like, him watching my dad interact with customers is, and not just as a customer, but as a friend, and ask how their kid's doing. Like, I learned that. I use that in ministry. Mm-hmm. So like, just from cutting grass with my dad, like, he put me in that environment you just said. So another thing that is really big when it comes to creating the strong family bond, and this one, depending on your personality, it can be very easy or it can be a challenge. And depending on your child's love language, you could do it well if you find that out, or you could do it poorly. But it is, as parents, love and show your kids love and affection. Show it to them. Let them experience it. Gosh, y'all, the other day, it's 3 a.m., okay? So it's 3 a.m., and my middle child comes and gets in the bed, which is fine. I don't care, because one day they're not, and I'm probably going to be like, I wish that, Mm-hmm. So he got in the bed at like 1, and it's 3, and he's leaning forward as far as, I'm like, oh no, he is about to throw up in the bed. And I'm like, what are you doing? And like, he just looks over his shoulder back at me, and he goes, scratch my back. And I'm like, what? Please scratch my back. So I'm dead tired. I just take my hand, start scratching his back. I fall asleep. And then he goes, why are you gonna quit? And I'm like, oh, so like I took like a couple minutes and just like scratched his back. Then he just lay back down and went to his love language is touch, right? He came to bed with the intent to get a back scratch.
Oh, I love that.
But like when it comes to like showing the love and affection, how critical is that as something you've seen in your family over the years, and that maybe you've seen it done well or not well in other families?
Yeah, I think that's super important, and something, you had a very wise piece of wisdom there, and in that you understand how to communicate with your son, in that you understand his love language, you understand what what language he needs to speak in order to feel love, and I think that's really important. I know something for me. I tended to want to speak love to my children in my love language and not theirs. And so it is not an obvious thing for me. It's not natural to me to look at somebody else with, and I think we're going to talk about this in a minute, and talk with empathy and to say that person has a need that I don't have. So I have to reach automatically into their needs in order to show them I love them. That's not a natural thing for me. It's a godly thing. It's an appropriate thing. It's what we're supposed to do. But I had to learn it, and I'm still not always very good at it. And I think that's important to think about with parents to children or within a family here. Understand that you can't. I've got to speak to my wife the way she needs to be spoken to. I need to speak to my kids the way they need to be spoken to, not necessarily the way I think I should.
Yeah. April, you want to take
She's
another
smiling
one?
at me.
Yeah, she's
like,
smiling.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the back scratch. I guess that's
talk.
what I was like every day. Scratch my back. It was funny.
Well, how about this? You want to take another one?
Yes. So I think another thing that's really important for close families is listening and being a good listener. And, I was thinking about that when, because you can listen and not hear them, or you can listen and actually really hear them. If you know what I'm saying, it can be really easy sometimes to just let somebody talk and just kind of be sort of present there, sort of distracted, and not really be, connecting with them. And I think kids want to be heard, and they want to know that they can come and talk to you and that you are going to listen. And with that listening also comes a responsibility in how you respond too. So it's really, I guess it's not just listening, but also talking, communicating both ways, because you want them to know that it's safe to come and talk to you. Everybody's different. Everybody is unique, even within families. And, I think, and I'm not saying this like I'm never been guilty of it. I'm just saying sometimes this is an area I have failed. But it's something that I'll strive for is you don't want to have a kid come up to you and talk to you about something that concerns them or that is serious to them, and then blow it off like, oh, that's no big deal. And so you want to I think it's important to remember that when something's important to your child, you need to listen to it and take it seriously. And that doesn't mean, if they're concerned about something that really they shouldn't be, that doesn't mean that we just tell them, oh, don't worry about it at all. I mean, have compassion, but help guide them towards truth, help guide them towards a correct mindset, but don't make them feel like their views are invalidated just because it might be different from yours.
Yeah, and that line's hard to walk sometimes.
It is hard.
Between, okay, I'm going to listen and validate you when you say, I don't know, that you're really scared of, cornflakes or whatever, but at the same time, I've got to honor, and this goes back to the thing I was thinking about a second ago. I have to understand how to speak into that that kid's situation right there. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I necessarily say, "Oh, yes, you're so right in how you're feeling." You have to walk that balance between respecting the place emotionally where the kid is or where the other person is right now, and then allowing them to stay in there if it's not a good place to be. So part of that, and you said this, is guiding them into truth and guiding them into into being a better person. And we can think about that in terms of parent to child, but also to each other as adults. And we're constantly doing that, or we should be. We should be looking to one another and saying, okay, there's something in me that I need to work on, or there's something in you I think you need to work on, and we need to work on those things together.
Yeah,
I know.
and,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, like when it comes to listening and responding, I find it so interesting and true that the way God teaches us is through His Word. Right? The way we understand life, what to do, what to not do, is through His Word. And how beneficial is it to us that God has said, hey, use those same things to raise your kid. Use the words. Use your words. Use my words through your mouth to them. Because it's not, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We parent in the same way that our Heavenly Father parents us, through spoken truth. And when it comes to that, I think about relationships. I think about very influential ones that I've had that don't exist anymore. And every one of them, there was a moment when we quit listening, right? Like when we quit, I wasn't valuing what they were saying anymore. I felt like I wasn't being heard, vice versa. And sometimes, I'm guilty of this because I'm moderately extroverted. And, sometimes it is, I can be, y'all laughing, right? Like that
Moderately
extrovert. I will go out and be like extroverted, and then my whole body just shuts down, and I need like 2 days to like nobody for a while, But like when I'm back, I'm back. But I'm guilty of this, and I'm guilty of this with my own kids. They tell you something, and while they're telling you, you're already thinking about, ooh, this is how this happened to me. And I'm going to share this story back to them once they get finished telling their story. And it's like, well, what have I just done to their story? I've just said, I can one up that. Even though I'm trying to relate to it, it could come across as a one up. And, it's funny. I was on Chat AI, which is artificial chat. And I put in there, give me 5 things that mothers should not do on their daughter's wedding. Just want to know. And the thing responded, when the mother makes the wedding all about her and talks about her wedding on the daughter's wedding day. And, oh, well, this is what happened on my wedding. And it's like, wow, there's moms who do that. But it comes down to this core principle that we're talking about here. And that is that we need to be people who listen. And actually, consequently, one of the other things it said, one of the best things a mother can do on a daughter's wedding day is to be present. When her daughter needs to have a minute, just be the sounding board, and don't necessarily. I'm like, wow, okay. So I thought that was really interesting in how we're geared to listen. But this is a core component to have a family that is bonded, because this is one of the connective tissues that gets us close together. So we have a couple more things that we want to pull out as far as what we can do to create a strong bond with our family. Robert, you want to take one?
Yeah, I think one thing that's really cool, and it's hard to do at first, but once you get there, it just becomes natural, and that's incorporate faith and spirituality. Incorporate your faith into everything that you do, and you think this is, it's people sometimes think it's, oh, that's really, really hard because I'm not a pastor, I'm not a minister, I don't know how to, I've never been a Sunday school teacher, I don't know how to do those kinds of things, but it's really not. It's not like that. I mean, you don't have to think about it in those terms. I like to think about, there's some guys that I've worked with that we were come from different theological backgrounds, all 4 of us, but that we will have conversations about faith and spiritual things, and it's just kind of what we talk about. Some people talk about baseball, some people talk about hunting. We talk about theology. And it's just part of the discussion of what we do. And I think you can do that same kind of thing in a family. Oh, why do we Why do we go to church on Sunday? Well, because we just honor God. That's just what we do. And it doesn't have to be some super spiritual thing. And we kind of talked about this several weeks ago. We were talking about catechizing your kids and teaching them truth at a very in kid-sized pieces at a very young age. And it's just kind of, I think it's that thing you can build that into everything you do. Why are we? We're making meals for somebody who's just had a baby. Why? Because we want to show that God loves them. We want to show they have a need that we can meet, and that just becomes a part of your conversation. A lot of us think those things anyway. We give money. We give money to a charitable cause. We give money to the church because we think it's a good thing to do, but we don't always talk to our kids about that. And all you have to do is say those things. Have those conversations in public, or have those conversations outside your own head, and then it becomes
public in your house.
Yeah, in public in your house. And then it just starts to become part of the fabric of your family, and those things often, kind of just by their very nature, they drive to some of these deeper things, which drive to deeper conversations, which help you to have these deeper bonds.
So I'm going to speak to that in just a second, because when you're saying that, I'm feeling pretty convicted, because everybody's got a hobby, right? Like, don't get them started, like a hunter. Okay. Like, I can go and talk to a hunter. Like, I don't even be talking about hunting. I'll be talking about like pizza, and they'll be like, oh, pizza's good. It's got meat on it. You know what else is made of meat? Deer, venison. Venison's awesome. You know how you get venison? You got to hunt it. You know how you hunt it? You get in a deer stand. You know what I do when I get a deer stand? I have this deer urine. I slap it on me, and the other deer can't. I'm like, well, you just went to deer urine from pizza. And the hunter, I did not have to twist his arm to get there. And next thing you know, he's into the weird part of hunting. I don't want to know about harvesting deer urine. I don't know, but they know it. And then they know what to do with it. And they have it in the truck. I'm like, that's strange to me. And then I'm like, so what do you think about this? What do you think about, the regulative principle of worship? So give them some weird thing. Well, I don't know. What do you think about this particular thing, like substitutionary atonement? Well, I don't know about that. Well, how long you been a Christian? 30 years? How long you been hunting? 25 years? And you know about deer pee, but you don't know about substitutionary atonement? And you've been a Christian, and I didn't have to twist your arm to talk about deer pee. But we don't want to talk about theology, and I'm sorry if I'm coming out a little hard. I know it may sound that way, and I apologize if it comes across. But like, one of the number one things to implement this bond of pulling in your faith into your family is you have to love your faith. If you love your faith, it will not be as hard, because you will naturally engage with it more when you're around them. Just like it's not hard for a hunter to get to hunting from pizza. It's not going to be hard if you make a conscious effort to fall in love with God, but also fall in love with the faith he's given you. And know that, like, sure, there's things you don't know yet. I promise you, no hunter, the first time they went and learned how to put a bullet in a gun, were like, now I want to learn about how to make grunt noises so I can call bucks. Like, no one, but we get there. And so my encouragement is, like, if it's hard for you to pull in your faith into your family, before you look at your family, look at yourself, and you'll find your conviction. And to put my own self on the chopping block, yesterday, man, this is really embarrassing. Yesterday we having dinner, and we're sitting around the dinner table, and I'm really hungry, okay? And my wife's a really good cook. And it's time for the blessing. And my son's got this cute God our Father blessing. But yesterday I was going to do it, So I said, Lord, appreciate today. Thank you for the food we're about to receive. I pray that it's good, and we bless our conversation, our food. And amen. And my son looks at me, he goes, you think that's talking to God? He's 5. He's like, you don't rush God.
Wow.
Because you can't rush your blessing. And I'm like, that's,
son, I'm hungry.
But like, to be said, like, we're all in this together. And what happens is, the moment you do drop the ball, incorporating your faith and your spirituality, if you've been at least trying to do it on the front end, hopefully your kids will see it.
Well, and there's a good principle in that story. I mean, your son probably can't yet understand, substitutionary atonement, but he knew when he recognized a something that he felt wasn't right spiritually. He understood the concept and he was willing to talk about it at his level. And I think that's a key point. One of the things I've had to learn is that not everybody likes to read and likes, academics and big words as much as I do, right? I can really get into that, but a lot of people don't. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a good conversation about spiritual things. It just means the vocabulary may be a little bit different.
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily read all of the old theologians to understand the theology that they taught. But you do need to think about it, and you do need to drive into the truths that Scripture teaches us.
Yeah. And okay, so there's one more, and it's a little bit lighter, but I think this is fantastic because you can pull this into your faith, you can pull it in to your family, you can pull it in anywhere, and I really think this is a good one before we segment on to our next portion, and that's this: we need to create traditions and memories in your family.
Yes,
like that is it's some of the bedrock, right? Like some of you just gone through a season of traditions. Like Christmas is so many traditions wrapped up, and then some of us you're currently making new traditions. Some younger couples who have just had kids and are having to realize they can't go across the country to see their mom and dads anymore. They're having to, wean off some of the old traditions to put new traditions on. But how important are traditions and memories and being intentional about we're going to create this tradition is that when it comes to creating a solid bond with your family?
Oh yeah, I mean, April's been really good at that in our marriage about saying things. It's like, oh, we're gonna do this thing, right? And we talked about fondue a second ago. That's something that we have done as a tradition. There's several things that we've done intentionally as we're gonna do this. Oh yeah, we're gonna do this next year too, and we've kind of set up to intentionally do that. There's other things that have kind of accidentally become traditions, and those are fun too. So, just because we have actually one thing Christmas related, we came home one day and our kids had, when they were very much smaller, they had decorated the tree while we were out, and they just kind of did that to surprise us, and that kind of became a tradition. It's like, okay, the kids are going to decorate the tree, and for several years we would leave and they would decorate the tree and we would come back, and then it got to be fun. We would all do it together, but that's so sometimes the traditions happen, intentionally, and sometimes they don't. And that kind of comes back to that idea of spending time together doing things. Sometimes when you spend time together doing things, the thing that you do is like, hey, let's do that again. Right. And it can become one of your family traditions.
And traditions, sometimes they're monumental and we set aside, and sometimes they're inconsequential, but they're like my grandfather, when he was alive, he lived in Wisconsin. My dad, we live in South Carolina. He called Dad every single day of his life. Like, even in the end, he had dementia. He lost a lot, but he knew he needed to call Dad. And if not, guess what? My dad called him. That's a tradition at that point. We're going to talk every day. And I think that looking back on it now he's passed, my dad does not regret one of those instances. There's another thing. And I guess that's one thing that my dad's good at. He's good at like the little traditions that you don't really think about. Like we had an aunt, and she was a fantastic lady, and she's kind of sarcastic. So is my dad. So they always had this, like when my dad walked in the room, he'd look at her and he'd say, and Jane, he'd go, "I'm glad you got to see me today." And it was funny because sometimes she would catch him first. "I'm glad you got to see me today." And it was funny because it was kind of snarky, but that was their little thing. And my dad and her husband were best friends. And it was like this running joke that they had with the best friends' wives. And I think like when I look back at that stuff, I'm like, it didn't seem like much, but it made just being around each other that much more fun because it's like this little inside thing. So sometimes the traditions are like, we're going to go on this vacation, and some people, we're going to watch this movie every year. But sometimes it's like, hey, glad you got to see me today, And I think sometimes those traditions are sometimes even bigger because they're so much repetitive in the nature of that.
Something that just came that I was just thinking of as you said that with the really small traditions is I don't know how many years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years, within the last 5 years, I think, our daughter, so that's our middle child, our daughter and our youngest son, they have this very involved handshake that they do. And you never know when it's going to happen, but there's like this little, the tradition is that when one of them strikes this certain pose, that's something they do with the pose, their body, you have to see it, but they just they stand a certain way. They assume the handshake stance, basically. Then the other one sees it, and then they go through this long ritualistic handshake that's very, very involved and fun. And, we talked at the beginning of the podcast that she moved 2 hours away to go to chiropractor school this weekend. And when we were in the driveway, as she was about to hop in the car, because we actually gone and moved her into her apartment, and then she came back for the rest of the weekend, partially to be able to say goodbye to everyone, but also to be there for your sermon this week as well. And but anyway, so we'd moved her, but she was back for the weekend, and then she left. So the real leaving was Sunday afternoon, and we were standing in the driveway and hugging, and I was crying and hard to let go. And then when I let go, all of a sudden she looks at her brother, and they do that handshake, and she was just crying through, like, even just the handshake, that tradition of that. And I wasn't able to quite see if my son was, tearing up too, but you could see from both of them that they knew the significance of doing that, just kind of signing off until they see each other next time, which won't be long. I mean, we'll make trips for a while, planning to make use of weekends.
But
and drive up to say hi.
What they probably just realized in that minute was the value of this handshake just went way up.
Yes.
Because you won't do it as much. So,
yeah.
Well, hey, really, really quick, kind of get to the end here. We do want to touch on what we had in church this week. This week, we, quite frankly, were settling in Romans 5. Last week, we were in Genesis 3, talking about what Adam did. And this week, in light of that, we talked about what Jesus did. And basically, it came down to this concept of federal headship, which we talked about, how that is such a core component of Christianity that probably doesn't get enough light in the Western culture that we live in. And that's the whole idea that even if you never sinned, you sinned. Because Adam, he didn't just bring in our proclivity to sin, he brought in sin. And Scripture's really clear, like death spread, and through his sin, everyone sinned. It doesn't say everyone has a nature. It says they sinned. We see it echoed throughout the Bible. David, in sin was I conceived. And what we really buried down into it is that the solution is this free gift, and how it's singular. There's not more than one way to resolve this sin issue. It's free, which means we can't do anything for it. We've talked about on the podcast before how our nature is to try to feel like we earn something, whether it be doing works or either saying a prayer correctly. And then lastly, it's this gift. It's something that is beyond just the benefits of the gift. Oftentimes as Christians, we talk about the benefits. Well, I'm a Christian, so the benefactory is I get to live eternally and I don't go to hell. I get to have this family. But the actual tangible gift is Christ's righteousness. That is the gift, and everything else flows from that gift. So in the vein of our conversation this week, we talked about how Jesus did what the first man couldn't do. He, being the second man, provided us with that path to righteousness.
Yeah, and I think you started off with, in the sermon with a really good illustration, because I think a lot of us, when we hear, federal headship, okay, that's a weird concept, and what does that really mean? And you pointed out that if the president of the United States goes and insults, or I can't remember exactly what it was.
Nukes Moscow.
Yeah, nukes Moscow. There you go. That's going to be an issue. That's going to be a problem for all of us, right? And the president, as the head of the nation, can make decisions that are relevant to the rest of us as well, and that cause consequences for the rest of us. And that concept, when you put that together, it's like, oh, now it makes sense. Now I can take this biblical concept that seems kind of weird and unfair, that something Adam did, should cause me to have, a consequence. Well, okay, but that's because there's a structure in place that God intended to put in place for other reasons, and that the breaking of that relationship between Adam and God caused the relationships to break between God and all of Adam's descendants in that sense.
Yeah, and ultimately it's an act of love that this federal headship is even in place, because if it was up not just to Adam, but say the lot was cast to all of us to do it perfectly, none of us would. But then the lot would also be cast to all of us to be righteous, and none of us can be. So it's actually an act of love that through one man's sin, the whole world is condemned. That means it only takes one man's, who represents us, being perfect and righteous to bring us back into community with God. That is so much more beautiful than good luck. You'll need it. And this just really transmits in a lot of ways. There's some application we can bring into our family with this, in that there is this representative nature that exists within our family, right? Like as a father, like I represent this family, and like sometimes you've seen it, right? Like how many times have you come in and just set the mood for your whole family,
positively or negatively?
Definitely, right? And then it affects everything. And a lot of times what we try to instill into our kids, we try to do it on an individual level, but I think there's also something to be said about us saying, hey, let's step back and let's show how like this thing is also corporate.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was really cool that you said, more tries don't fix things, right? What fixes things is the one right thing, right? So it's not if my relationship is broken with God because I have sinned and continued to sin, me buckling down and gritting my teeth and saying, okay, now I'm gonna really try harder, and I'm gonna try harder tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Yeah, that's not really what matters. It's I have to cling to the one thing that can make a difference, and that's Christ.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where we can really pull in what we had just finished talking about, pulling in everyday spirituality, everyday Christianity into your life. Like, how many opportunities do we have to tell our kids, hey, listen, if you keep doing it the same way, it's going to end up the same, right? Mm-hmm. More attempts with a failing approach is just going to lead to failure. And that's similar with Christianity. If we try to approach God on our own, it doesn't matter what approach you take. It always leads to failure. We have to approach God through the cross, by grace, through faith. That is the only path that doesn't lead to damnation. And it only takes one. It took just Christ, which is a lot. It's more than we had to offer. But it's the same with our kids. We can help them understand, hey, listen, you're kind of doing it wrong. There's only one right way. Sometimes there's only one right way to do something. And you can help bridge that gap. And that's a really lofty concept. And actually, as I wrote this sermon, I worked with a former student. He's now at Southern Seminary. His name's Corey. We kind of worked on this together last week's in this. And we were really sitting in this whole concept of the federal headship and why that's necessary because of original sin. And it occurred to me that like I don't know how many times I've heard a sermon on that. Not that, oh, this is some pious thing, but it's just like, it's just not something it's kind of a foreign concept because in our culture, it's me, right? So let's talk about your sin, which we should. But like, even if you didn't sin, your sin's just icing on a cake that was already made. And it's helpful for us to lean into our families with this, hey, guess what? Like, there's a lot going on in our family. And guess what? Even if one of your kids is fine, if your other kid's having a hard time, you're both in it together. Like, you don't get to just check out because I'm fine. Or even as, like, if I've come home and my wife's had a really bad day and I've had a good day, or vice versa, like, which one loves the company? Misery or happiness? So like at that point I have to say, okay, how do I breathe life into this? Because right now we have a corporate problem, right? It's the family. How do I breathe life into it?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to think and kind of cool to think about. going back to why we need that, why do we need that redemption in the first place? It's the consequences of sin. It's the consequences of that rebellion that, when Adam and Eve in the garden made the decision to say, oh, I know, there's the one command and I'm not going to do it. Right. And so that they decided that they're going to, that they wanted to choose right and wrong, decide what was right and wrong rather than allow God to decide that and obey him. That broke everything. And so now we've got to come back into that, got to get back into that right relationship. And I think it's important, and Corey talked about this last week, that doesn't just break our relationships with, individually with God. It breaks our relationships with each other. It broke their relationship with each other. It broke their relationship in their family. It had consequences for their children. And the same thing's true for us. All these things have consequences for us. So I, as a husband, as a father, as a parent, I need to look to Christ and say, all right, I want to submit myself to Christ's headship, right? Which means not just saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. It means doing what he says, right? So if I'm going to, in a military context, I'm going to be a part of a military unit, that doesn't just mean putting on the uniform and wearing that patch. It might mean that, but it also means doing what the commander says, right? And so that's the thing that is important for us to remember, is that headship that we want to place ourselves under in order to repair all of those relationships. Because ultimately that's what God wants, is he wants us to have better relationships with each other, because that reflects that allows us to reflect his nature better.
And when we're under that federal headship of Christ, it's so laser important for us just to realize that he has paid for our sin. And I know we're like, oh yeah, of course, that's just basic gospels. But like there's a big prevalent belief right now that, he's died for me, but when you die, you got to answer for it. You're going to stand in front of God, and even if you're a Christian, you got to answer for it. And this is one of those theologies that helps correct that. Like if you are in Christ, you will not answer for your sin one day. Your sin has already been answered for. And everybody's sin is either answered for in their future or in the distant past on the cross. And when we present it as the other way, how much anxiety does that give you? It's just like, because it takes us back to performance-based faith. And then like, how do we transmit that down to our kids? Like if we forgive our kids, do we need to let them be in fear for the next time they mess up there? We're just going to bring up the past and hold it against them as well. Like, no, like our love for them is free. Now, that doesn't mean that, we are forgiveness and trust are different, right? We've talked about that. Like, that doesn't mean that my kid's not going to have to build their trust back up. Like when we sin against God, he's forgiven us. Does that there's some trust, right? Like we've seen in scripture where he disciplines us, right? He corrects us because he's trying to conform us back into his image, make us trustworthy people. But there is something to be said about the nature of forgiveness, when it comes to giving that out the same way that it's been given to us.
And I think that's, it's important, how do we forgive? Well, we forgive because we recognize that Christ forgave us, right? The one thing that you had in here, you're talking about being the free gift. The gift is righteousness, like you talked about a minute ago, but we all have the same amount of goodness before God. We all have the same amount of righteousness before God because we are all in the same status under Christ before God. So, in that sense, it allows me to be forgiving because I recognize, in that sense, my forgiveness. And I recognize that, our status, my status and whoever it is that has wronged me that I need to be forgiving, we are both in the same place under Christ. We are both in the same, in that same need, have that same need of forgiveness, that same need of redemption. So we don't have to wait for, I don't have to in some sense wait for you to make a retribution to me or make some sort of a repayment to me in order to forgive you. that may be part of our relationship, that trust being restored, but it doesn't have to be, because I can recognize my status and your status under Christ.
Yeah, if God waited for us to ask forgiveness before he forgave us, we would all be in the wrath path of a holy God. Because last time I checked, no one seeks after God, no, not one. All have fallen away. We're referred to as enemies of the cross. There's so many. Well, the big kicker is that he makes us new. He grants us this new heart, and out of that we ask for forgiveness. So that's such a good security loop. That the whole idea that, well, I'll forgive them when they ask for forgiveness. Well, you better be glad your God didn't treat you that way, So I do think that this has a lot of implications for us. I think every now and then it's good just to refresh it that, like, yes, our sin separates us, but we are separated even aside from ourselves. That's how big Adam's sin was, but that's how even greater our God is. So today, as we kind of close it down, I just want to leave us with one just quick thing, and that is this: walk boldly in the bigness of your God.
I like that.
Walk boldly in the bigness of him. Use what he's given you to create a bond in your family that will outlive you. Until next time, I'm Delmar.
I'm Robert.
I'm April.
And this is Living in Harmony.